back to the Antler Studios development log. For those who are new to the series, welcome. I'm Emily, I am the producer and founder of Antler Studios. Tom's passed the baton to me this week, so I'll be running through all you need to know about funding your indie game as an unpublished dev. If you're new to the block like we were at the time, hopefully this will really help you navigate the absolute maze of funding and could steer you on the right path to funding your indie game. If there's anything that you think I've missed in this video, or there's anything that you want to know a bit more in detail about that you want us to cover, then just let us know, comment below, and we'll try and feature it at some point, or we'll get back to you. I also want to apologise for the audio quality of this. Tom's fancy mic is back with him in Oxford and we're a remote team and basic equipment, so I'm sorry about that. During this video, I'm going to take you through a step-by-step process on how to fund your indie game. I really want to give you guys some top tip bits of advice. Firstly, just to bear in mind what your game is and what it's going to be more suited to. So for instance, if I was doing a game that had some educational merit, I would really consider doing an R&D sort of route of funding, so you're talking about grants and things like that, rather than a more commercial route like publishers or crowdfunding. But that's just something that I want you guys to think of in the back of your mind when you're watching this video. So the first step is bootstrapping. Now I think everyone will be needing to do this because it's just the way it goes when you first start from concept to actually developing your game. Bootstrapping is a term where you're funding it off your own back. For us, we managed this by working part-time jobs and then working on the game. None of us gave up our jobs at this point because honestly, you know, we would have starved and I probably would have gone grey by now. So it's really important to do what's manageable, and no one's really going to take your game on if you haven't sort of reiterated it and refined it and polished it. You really need to sort of get to that stage to then start applying for funding, which was a lesson we learned sort of early on. The ways that I would keep my momentum up during this point, because it can be really tiring, is go to trade shows, apply for free spots. It's the one way that we got feedback on our game. We saw people play it for the first time. It was almost like a QA testing for us. And if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have been able to build up our audience either. We would have just been hiding in the shadows of the internet. So really do go to trade shows and reach out and try and get your game out there. So the next step you're going to go through is family, friends or fools. Now you might be the fool in the scenario, I don't quite know, but for us it was family. So this is anyone who can lend you some capital. That could be you from your savings, or it could be a friend, or it could be a member of your family. But this is the time when you've got a great concept, but it needs polish and you need to refine it. And that could be filling those skill gaps, or it could be going out to trade shows to be able to refine your game. It's really important that you go through this process because you need to get something polished and really sellable to whoever you're going to be pitching to. So during this time for us, we took our game to so many trade shows, we refined our demo from this, we actually sent it to publishers as well to get as much feedback as possible. And I guess this stage of it is the sort of the time when your game's going to be tested. Do industry experts think it's commercially viable? You know, does it have appeal? If more than one publisher turned around to us and said, look, I think the concept sucks and I don't think this is ever going to sell, we really probably would have taken a step back and just tried to publish our demo and let that be it and not carry on. But the overwhelming feedback that we got from publishers was, great concept, I love it, it needs to be polished, it's not quite there yet, we can't take it on. We were unpublished devs, we had limited community following, and we had a game that still needed to be refined with the design and the game feel, and it just needed to be polished. And if we hadn't gone through that process of polishing, we wouldn't have got to where we are now. So it's really important to be open to criticism, to watch people play your game, go to the trade shows, pitch to those publishers, find out the areas that you need to improve of your game. Another big tip I would say here is when you are building that vertical slice of your game, try not to build a demo actually, but just build the start of your game to be your demo, because we wasted a lot of time here. We had like its own vertical slice and we tried to cram in loads of mechanics, and because of that we didn't really onboard the players very well, and people found it really tricky because 1 minute they were using this robot, the next they had a potion and they just didn't really know what to do. So it also didn't reflect our game. Our game was supposed to be quite open world, and our vertical slice was very linear. So learning that process, it was about a year this took us. It really helped sort of take us to where we are now and put us in a really strong position. Now, the next 3 steps are going to be ones that are kind of optional. It's going to be whatever route you decide to go on. So we'll call this step 3, funding your game through fans. That could be Patreon or Kickstarter or Indiegogo. Having consumer validation, which we talked about previously, is so important to applying for other funds. It really shows that your game's wanted, it gives numeric data to your game, and it builds a community. A game without a community is gonna really struggle when it comes to pitching. So this bit is really important. For us, when we crowdfunded, we chose Kickstarter because it suited our style of game. But we couldn't really fund our game on Patreon because Patreon is something that needs to be subscribed to every month, so you need to be able to whack out content within that time. We had months of preparation for this period. We focused on building up our community. We hired someone called Lauren Moses, and she was amazing at getting our game out there and connecting us to different devs and to really help propel us for our launch. And without that, we wouldn't have been able to do that. And again, this comes from the previous step 2 of Friends, Family, Fools. If it wasn't for that capital, we wouldn't have been able to hire Lauren, and if it wasn't for Lauren, we wouldn't have been able to launch our game and get additional funding. So we made that decision to hire someone for that role because honestly, we were devs who don't really know how to market a game. We didn't really know how to engage properly with the press or build our community fans. We were the devs who thought, oh, we'll post something on Twitter and the fans will come to us if we use the right hashtag. No, it doesn't work like that. So if you don't know how to do that side, I'd strongly recommend hiring someone to do it, or getting in contact with someone who might want to volunteer to work for you, and maybe there's a revenue share that you can do at the end of it, or maybe you can just join a Discord, which you can ask advice from. There's a really good marketing Discord channel called Games Marketing Essentials, and that really helps you ask all the questions you might need to know. Building up your game base is so important for any crowdfunding campaign. If you've got like 500 followers on Twitter and you're asking for 70k, it's not gonna happen. Unless for some stroke of luck you suddenly get viral, your game's probably gonna flop. It's not because your game sucks, it's because you haven't done the groundwork to get your game to that point. And our next step is step 4, which is grants. Now again, this is an optional step. For us, we actually used this earlier on than later in our development because we were university peers and our game was actually our dissertation, and we applied for a grant called Transfuser, which we were successful in. It was a really good introduction to the industry, and it just shows you that there are grants out there for different stages of development. So it might be you're at the concept phase, or you might be doing a wireframe or a vertical slice, or your game might be in beta and you need some help getting over the line. There are different grants that will give you money to these, and different amounts that you can sort of pitch for. So if you had a game which cost 90k to develop, but the grant was 20k, then try and spin that in why you need that 20k and what it will go towards, rather than saying you're going to build your game with that 20k, because people will see straight through that. And it's also really important to apply for grants which actually suit your game. There's no point in spending all of that time and all of that energy applying in this really long form, because grants are always a long application process, for a grant which says you need to be a story-driven game which is 2D or something like that, and then yours is a 3D first-person shooter. Like, just be realistic and don't waste your time, because you'll sap all of the motivation. You don't want needless rejections. You need to be really realistic with your goals. Now, There's loads of ways you can search for grants. Simply Google it, or there's a really good industry body in the UK called UKI, which lists a hell of a load of grants, both government backed and private. And these grants could be stuff like the Ministry of Defence do really good grant schemes for technology sectors. There's an Xbox backed grant scheme called Green Shoots. Innovate UK is another great one. Or maybe there's a private grant you can apply to, like Epic Mega Grants. If you use Unreal Engine, then reach out to them. Epic have an amazing supportive network, and even if it's just getting feedback on your game, or you want to go into the Unreal spotlight, just reach out, talk to them, because they have representatives for whatever area you're based in who will really help sort of take you through that process and give you feedback and give you advice. And then finally, this brings us on to step 5. And again, it's another potential option for you. You might not choose to go down this route, but the last one is a publisher. Now, there's loads of pros and there's a few cons on why you would go for a publisher. What a publisher can do for you is, if you've got limited marketing resources or you want to be able to port to different consoles, you should really consider going with a publisher, because they've got the experience to bring you through to that process, which is vital for you. When you're thinking about applying to a publisher, make sure you have stuff like numerical data to back your game. So wishlist number, community number, why it would sell. Break your pitch down into the features, to the story of your game, to the actual basic burn down of how much money you're going to be spending a month and how much money you need. Try and explain why you would want to work with that publisher as well. Maybe that publisher has got a speciality in story-driven games. Maybe that publisher has worked with crowdfunding titles before. Either way, really try and tailor your pitch and make your pitch shout and bleed your game. Whack the art in, make it really appealing. Plan and roadmap. Say why you want the money and how much for, and what you're going to be using that money for as well. Another thing you really need to do, which apparently is often neglected, is to estimate your success and project your sales. This could come from numerical data like wishlist number, which you can convert, or maybe it's competitor analysis. Have a look at all of the recent games that are out there and then see how much they sold. Like Steam Spy is really good for this. Only do recent titles as well, because old titles are pretty much irrelevant at that stage for them. Do this competitor analysis and see if your game falls within that. If those titles have done well, this is why yours should. But make sure you don't neglect poorly performing titles too, because you need to be aware of the most successful to the least successful, and then you need to find an average of that. Also, if your budget is like half of the amount of money is all for marketing, if you're going with a publisher, they take that responsibility, so don't budget for it. And anything you haven't budgeted for, make sure you say that in your pitch deck, because you always want to let the publisher know that you're aware of these areas, but you might not be reaching out to it yet. And that is it. Thank you so much for watching it through. If there's anything you guys want me to cover more, then just comment below. I'm happy to go through any other topics. This whole vlog was done because of Twitter, so literally if there's a suggestion that you really want to know more details about, it might be crowdfunding, or it might be pitching to publishers, or it could be just how we survived when we were bootstrapping, then just comment below. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching.
If you've enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe, and if you want to have a try of the game, then it's out on Steam. We do have a free demo. Please wishlist it if you do like it. It really helps and gets Project Grove out there.